Uh, I've been doing environmental permitting on both sides for about 40 years. When I first heard that a refinery was going to use geothermal energy, I found it quite puzzling because of all the energy that goes into a refinery in terms of oil as well as natural gas. And so the question I had first is geothermal energy even feasible? The Department of Energy, now headed by Rick Perry, has the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy that has mapped geothermal resources throughout the United States. And here is that map. And generally, the red areas are favorable, and then the least favorable areas are yellow. And if you look at the the left-hand side of that figure, the western part of the U.S., those little dots are where there are actually power plants using geothermal energy. And this is simply a drawing that shows where the existing geothermal power plants are. And as you can see, they are all west of Texas, and at this point, there are none in Texas, according to DOE. Next. So if you look at Texas, you do see it ranges from what I'm going to call dark orange to yellow. So there are areas where there is the potential development of geothermal energy. DOE has what they call the geothermal prospector. And what I did is I blew it up, so to speak, and showed the proposed Raven petroleum location. And you can see it's in what I call a dirty yellow area, which is about in the middle of the favorability range. And then there's the favorability range, as you can see, where the red is most favorable, and it goes down to the yellow, which is the least favorable. This is actually part of that prospector program. I highlighted a portion of the area near Raven, and there actually weren't any data on the Raven property that I could find. But this correlates the favorability of the energy by depth. And it's in kilometers, it's in meters, so it's not real straightforward. But if you look at the that's what they're talking about in terms of about 12,000 feet. And you can see it's in centigrade, but that translates into a bit over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And as you probably know, the boiling point of water is 212. So it is over the boiling point of water, and it can be used for geothermal energy. They're talking about making 20 megawatts of energy, or I should say electricity, from geothermal energy. I haven't done the calculations and researched that, but I think that's going to be a lot of water. So Petroleum's managing director has said it's exciting because we found a way to overcome the barriers to enter the refining industry. I wondered what that meant, and that was in the community view on March 3rd of this year. One of the barriers I think he's talking about is the air permitting process. And there is a permit process called Prevention of Significant Deterioration Air Pollution Permit, and that's for refineries of this size, usually. And a PSD permit requires air quality analysis, additional impacts analysis, as well as public involvement. And the purpose of the air quality analysis is to demonstrate that air pollutants emitted from the proposed major source in conjunction, and this is important, in conjunction with other applicable emissions increases or decreases from existing sources will not cause or contribute to a violation of any applicable air permit standards. These are the criteria of pollutants that Neil was talking about. And an air quality analysis requires the collection of at least a year's worth of air quality data at the proposed site before you can even file a permit application. Thus, the removal of this barrier, I think. Now, y'all have already seen this figure with more dramatic arrows than this, but the prevailing winds based on the nearest windrows, which is actually there's two about equidistant, one Brownsville, one San Antonio. This is the Brownsville windrows, shows the prevailing winds as was previously stated are blowing directly toward where we are right now. And that's about 40% of the time. If you were to take that very same two arrows and just slide it a couple miles down or slide it a couple miles over to the other side, Bruni would not be in that impact zone, and it would literally reduce potential impacts by several factors. So the additional impacts analysis is very comprehensive. Not only do you have to look at the impacts due to air to you as you know, a living, breathing person, but it also requires that they look at the ground, accumulation and water pollution, soils, vegetation, visibility of any regulated pollutant from the source and associated growth. That's important, because if there's ancillary development in addition to the refinery, that has to be taken into account, as well as the emissions from the refinery. So why is there a PSD permit process? It's to protect public health and health and welfare. It's to ensure that the economic growth occurs in a manner consistent with preservation of existing clean air resources, and assure that any decision to permit increased air pollution in any area to which it applies is only done after careful evaluation of the potential consequences and after adequate procedural opportunities are provided for public participation. So once again, you know, if this sort of analysis was required, if a PSD analysis was required, they would have to look at the fact that this source of air pollution is directed toward Bruni, Texas. So why are they saying they're going to use geothermal energy? Why are they saying they're going to inject CO2 into the ground, called sequestration? I think it's to avoid having to not only get the delay associated with a PSD permit, but also to have to look at the detailed environmental impact analysis associated with the emissions. Moore has said that construction is expected to begin in the next 2 or 3 months. It should be completed by late 2018 if the 20-month construction schedule job stays on schedule. That can't happen, as has been said repeatedly here. There's no permit application on file. It's a pre-construction permit. They can't start construction until the permit's issued. It would take, even if they avoid PSD, it would take at least, in my opinion, 1.5 years to get such a permit. So clearly, there's no construction that's going to start. Now, I think what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, you know, construction consists of putting a fence up and grading. Well, under the air rules, that's not construction. So at best, they're being disingenuous and misleading. Thank you.